when we think about diplomacy, it's usually, the big moments, treaties, handshakes on a global stage.
Mm-hmm. Grand gestures.
Exactly. But what if I told you that just setting up a meeting, a single meeting with a key leader, could involve weeks of really subtle negotiation and a deep, deep understanding of the political currents?
Oh, absolutely. It's often those details, the behind-the-scenes work, that's incredibly complex, much more than people realize.
And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're drawing from a really fascinating discussion featuring Professor Zhang Wei from Fudan University and Professor Jin Kanrong from Renmin University.
Yeah, they offered some really insightful takes on the history, the key elements of new China's foreign policy.
So our goal here is to kind of synthesize their insights for you, give you a clear path to understanding what can be a pretty nuanced topic.
We want to move beyond just the headlines, Look at specific examples, the core principles that have really shaped China's diplomacy over the years.
Right. Think of it as a shortcut to getting up to speed, hopefully with some surprising details, maybe a few aha moments. But keeping it clear, keeping it engaging.
We'll try to unpack the big picture, definitely, but also zoom in on those smaller stories that really bring the evolution to life.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's start with this really interesting diplomatic snapshot from Professor Zhang.
Yeah, this anecdote he shares is quite telling. It shows the sheer level of detail, strategic thinking involved in something that might look routine.
He takes us back to 1983, right? Summer of 83, when he was just starting out, in the Foreign Ministry's translation office.
Mm-hmm. And his introduction was quite something. The visitor was Imelda Marcos, wife of the Philippine president at the time.
A very well-known figure, certainly. But the real diplomatic challenge wasn't just her visit itself. It was arranging a meeting for her with Deng Xiaoping.
And Deng, at that point, was chairman of the Central Advisory Commission, a hugely influential figure even in that advisory role.
So a meeting with him carried enormous weight, symbolically, politically, especially, given the situation in the Philippines then.
Exactly. Benigno Aquino Jr. had just been assassinated right before her visit. The political climate was incredibly tense. A meeting with Deng would be seen as a significant signal.
But interestingly, this meeting wasn't even on the original schedule.
No, it wasn't. And this is where the persistence of the Philippine ambassador comes in. He went to Vice Foreign Minister Wu Minglian.
And really pushed for it, right?
Yeah.
Arguing that the Philippines needed Deng's perspective, his wisdom during that unstable time.
Wu Minglian was hesitant at first, and understandably so. Deng Xiaoping was older. His public engagements were limited.
But the ambassador was clever. He didn't just insist. He used strategy. He brought up past meetings, even reminding Wu that Chairman Mao himself had met Mrs. Marcos before.
Right, subtly emphasizing the precedent, the importance of that kind of high-level access.
And he also stressed that Imelda could offer Deng a unique first-hand briefing on the situation back home.
So eventually, a compromise was found. A meeting was arranged, but with Vice Premier Wan Li.
Because the premier himself was out of the country, visiting the U.S.
Yes. And here's the really interesting part. Professor Zhang highlights the ambassador seemed to know the premier's travel schedule. He knew Wan Li would be the one available.
Which suggests, doesn't it, that there was already some level of subtle negotiation or information gathering happening? It wasn't just a simple request.
Absolutely. It points to that intricate dance, the behind-the-scenes maneuvering, all for what looks like one meeting.
So the takeaway from this story, as Professor Zhang puts it, what is it?
It's that real diplomacy, effective diplomacy, demands this incredible meticulousness, a lot of unseen effort. He calls it needing a sophisticated mind.
A sophisticated mind, meaning
holding firm on your principles, but also being flexible, being incredibly thorough in how you execute things. It echoes what Zhu Enlai expected from Chinese diplomats.
That blend of principle and pragmatism. And Professor Zhang then makes a comparison, doesn't he? Contrasting this with what he sees sometimes today.
Yes, he suggests that this kind of thoughtful, detail-oriented approach is maybe less common in some political circles now, pointing specifically to the U.S. It's quite a direct comparison.
Interesting. So this anecdote, it really serves as kind of microcosm, illustrating those underlying principles: strategic thinking, meticulous execution.
Exactly. And from that specific story, Professor Jin then broadens the view. He steps back to look at the major achievements of China's foreign policy over, more than 70 years now.
And it's quite a list he presents. He starts with strategic prudence.
Strategic prudence, meaning essentially avoiding huge strategic blunders. He contrasts China's path with, say, the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan or the U.S. getting bogged down in Vietnam.
Avoiding those major costly mistakes.
Right. Then he emphasizes safeguarding national independence. This is a really core point for him.
Independence. He argues that true independence, being really free from major outside influence, is actually quite rare today.
Mm-hmm. He points to countries like Japan, South Korea, many European nations operating within significant alliance structures or geopolitical frameworks, suggesting China's situation is, well, different.
Then there's the economic transformation, facilitating industrialization.
Yeah, this is huge. Moving from a primarily agricultural society to a major industrial power in, 70 years? He stresses how diplomacy played a key role here.
How so?
By enabling China to learn from the Soviet Union initially, then later from the U.S., from Europe, from the rest of the world, really, adapting experiences.
Right. And alongside that, he points to improved living standards.
Yeah.
The jump in per capita grain output, for example. Tangible benefits.
Definitely. And then internationally, China's enhanced standing, being recognized as a major global power.
He also mentions contributing to regional peace and upholding international justice, specifically highlighting China's role in decolonization movements historically.
Yes. And more recently, active participation in reforming global governance, trying to shape the rules of the game, so to speak.
And finally, he talks about offering a China model for modernization.
Right. Not as a model everyone must follow, but as an alternative path. Different from Western models, and he argues also distinct from Soviet or Japanese paths, which he sees as kind of variations on a state-driven German model.
So quite a sweep of achievements. From that specific meeting diplomacy we started with to these broad national accomplishments, it shows a lot of evolution.
Absolutely. And that evolution is key. Professor Jin really emphasizes how China's foreign policy has adapted over time, linked directly to its own development stages.
He uses Deng Xiaoping's framework, right? The phases of standing up, getting rich, and now becoming strong.
Exactly. And the foreign policy priorities shifted in each phase.
So in the Mao era, the focus was really on consolidating independence, dealing with the past, dealing with sanctions, that idea of cleaning the house before inviting guests.
Starting fresh, establishing sovereignty. Then the Deng era, reform and opening up, that was a major shift.
Towards comprehensive diplomacy, the main goal being
creating a stable external environment, peaceful conditions needed for economic development. That was the absolute priority.
And he contrasts this with, say, Khrushchev's reforms of the Soviet Union, which didn't involve that same kind of opening up to the world economy.
A crucial difference. And now, in the Xi Jinping era, the focus is on major country diplomacy.
Meaning China taking on more international responsibility, acting like the major power it has become?
Yes, taking a more proactive role on the global stage. But the underlying principle across all these eras, Jin stresses, is adaptation. Adapting policy to the needs of the time.
Makes sense. And beyond just adapting, he also points to actual innovations China brought to diplomacy, both theoretical and practical.
Right. On the theory side, he talks about Mao's three worlds theory.
Can you quickly unpack that?
Sure. It was basically a strategic framework. It divided the world into three blocks. The two superpowers, US, USSR, other developed nations, and then the developing countries, the third world.
And China positioned itself.
As part of and a leader within that third world, it was a way to build alliances and enhance China's global standing, separate from the superpower rivalry.
Okay, and practically. The big example.
Ping-pong diplomacy. It's almost legendary, isn't it?
It really is. That chance encounter between the players, Zhuang Zedong and Glenn Cowan.
Yeah, and then Zhou Enlai, seeing the opportunity, encouraging the follow-up visits, it just cracked open the door.
Paved the way for Nixon's visit, normalization. It's amazing how a small, almost accidental event
can become a catalyst for such huge geopolitical shifts. It really speaks volumes.
Now, the discussion also covered some interesting points from audience questions. One theme that kept coming up was this idea of independent foreign policy.
Yes, and the historical context there is important. Professor Jin talked about the struggle to achieve and then maintain that independence, thinking about past Soviet influence, the Korean War.
And contrasting it with current situations like Ukraine, maybe, highlighting the pressures nations face.
Exactly. It underscores the need for, well, strong national will and a real sense of history to navigate those pressures and maintain autonomy.
Another point raised was about decision-making, China's strategic choices.
The emphasis was on a cautious, deliberative approach, drawing on, a long history of governance, a kind of ingrained strategic culture, less about impulsive moves, more long-term thinking.
And they also touched on building the diplomatic corps itself. It wasn't an afterthought.
Not at all. Professor Jin mentioned how the Communist Party started cultivating diplomatic talent early on, even before 1949. Figures like Zhu Enlai, training programs in Yan'an, laying the groundwork.
Okay, shifting gears to a current issue, Fukushima, the release of treated wastewater. China's opposition was discussed.
Yes, and this brought up a broader point about information, or maybe misinformation, in global politics. The challenge of getting the facts straight.
Specifically distinguishing the treated water from the highly contaminated cooling water that was in direct contact with the reactor cores. That distinction is crucial, but often gets lost.
It really does. And it highlights the difficulty of dealing with these complex issues, science, environment, politics, all mixed together, and the need for transparency and, responsibility.
Thinking about potential responses, too, like international assessments, impacts on fisheries, tourism, building international consensus.
Right. It's a complex diplomatic challenge.
And that idea of chance versus necessity came up again with ping-pong diplomacy.
Yeah, was it just luck? Or was it bound to happen? The discussion suggested it's often both.
Like the underlying conditions were there. The U.S. and China both saw strategic reasons to connect in the 70s.
Exactly. That created the necessity, the fertile ground. But the ping-pong interaction provided the chance, the unexpected spark. It's that interplay.
Fascinating. And finally, they talked about the public's role, this idea of major country diplomacy involving everyone.
Or public diplomacy, yeah. The idea that it's not just officials anymore. Regular people, through what they do online in their professions, they contribute to the national image.
Countering negative narratives,
Yep.
building understanding. And they noted the growing confidence of younger generations in China in this regard.
It's a recognition that diplomacy is becoming, more societal, a broader effort.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this deep dive up. We've covered a lot. From the incredible detail in day-to-day diplomacy, like that Marcos meeting,
To the really significant achievements over 70-plus years of New China's foreign policy, as Professor Jin laid out.
we looked at how it's adapted standing up, getting rich, becoming strong, the different needs of different eras,
The innovations, too, like the Three Worlds Theory and, of course, ping-pong diplomacy.
and touched on current dynamics like independence, decision-making, public engagement.
It really does highlight that constant balancing act in foreign policy between the long-term strategic goals.
And responding to those immediate, sometimes unexpected events.
Right.
How do internal changes and the global situation create those moments for diplomatic shifts?
It's something to really think about. How do those principles we discussed, the strategic foresight, the adaptability, that meticulousness, how might they apply to the global challenges we're all facing now?
It's a good question to leave our listeners with.
Ultimately, I think getting a handle on the nuances of any nation's foreign policy, like China's, just gives you so much insight into its identity, its priorities, and its evolving place in the world.